Welcome to today's Master of Agribusiness webinar, hosted by the Master of Agribusiness program at Kansas State University. I'm Deborah Cole, the coordinator of the MAB program, and we will hear from Kevin Heikes in our webinar today. The MAB program is an executive distance program offering business training to professionals working full-time in the food, agriculture, and animal health sectors. The program is built to facilitate earning a master's degree without career interruption, and our students participate in 2 one-week face-to-face campus sessions on the K-State campus. The MAB program will be celebrating its 20th anniversary in January of 2018, and we will launch a year-long celebration this coming spring of 2017 with a special professional development event. Some housekeeping items for the webinar. Our presenter today would appreciate for you to be participatory throughout the session via the chat feature or by Twitter. If you have questions that arise during the webinar, we would encourage you to tweet them with the hashtag MABwebinar. We will enter them into the queue. Contact information for Kevin Heikes will be listed at the end of the webinar. Kevin Heikes is Vice President of Product for FarmLink, where he develops the product pipeline for agribusiness. His focus and expertise are in the commercialization of startups, understanding the agricultural ecosystem, and then infusing new technologies into the traditional agricultural supply chain. Before joining FarmLink in 2014, Kevin was responsible for technology operations at Farms Technology, an ag tech startup that conducted automated online grain origination, hedging, and trading between grain merchandisers and farmers. In 2012, the company was acquired by DuPont Pioneer, where Kevin led the integration efforts from a small startup into a standalone development team within the company. Kevin has also worked in numerous leadership roles at the American Royal Association, a Kansas City-based organization that promotes agricultural education and values. In addition, he previously worked as a business analyst at Sprint PCS and Farms.com. Kevin holds a Bachelor of Science in Agribusiness from Colorado State University and a Master of Agribusiness from Kansas State University. He was raised on a cattle operation in southern Colorado and now resides with his wife and 3 daughters in Lenexa, Kansas. Kevin, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Deborah. Do a quick sound check here. If everyone can give me a thumbs up or just let me know in the chat that the sound is okay, then we can jump in. Does everything sound all right? Perfect, perfect. Well, guys, this is a pleasure to be here today. It's fun to be able to do something a little bit different. In the past, have had the chance to work with MAB students as they were finishing up their thesis and talk about, the process that I went through, and I think a lot of you have ties to the MAB program. But today we're going to talk about, some leadership strategies and some things that I've seen over my career. So we'll kind of jump into a little bit here. Kind of from my perspective, I want to share the things to expect from this webinar and things that we're not going to expect. Number one is I'm not going to say anything today that you probably haven't heard before. I know a lot of times that we're looking for something new and unique, but I'm going to talk more about practical examples. I'm also going to share a lot of my background is in technology, and so when you think about leadership and you think about tools, I'll try and give some practical examples because I know when I listen to webinars and I listen to other people talk, I want to hear how they implemented those. So that's number one. Number two is I am not someone that has this all figured out. I go to webinars and leadership seminars and I work with different mentors all the time. And so I don't want you to think that I'm someone that thinks I have it all figured out. And what I tried to do is create this webinar and the standpoint is something that I would want to get out of. So if I was talking to myself, what are things that I'd want to see? So these are things that I'm working on and things that I've noticed. And then finally, as Deborah was talking, it helps. I love to see the chat items, pop up, just some interaction back and forth. I don't have necessarily word by word PowerPoint talks that we're going to go through here. So if something comes up and you want to engage and you want to ask a question, say, what does that mean? Feel free, because I do think that that's going to make for a more lively conversation. I know that with the chat box, that's an option. I've got a couple screens going here. I'm not going to be able to tweet in real time, but what I would love to do, as Deborah said, is if you use the hashtag #MABWebinar, let's continue the conversation. If there's things that you see that you'd like to engage on or go back and forth, feel free to use that as we go ahead. So those are just kind of some ground rules as we look at the content over the next 45 minutes or so. Here's an infographic, and I don't expect you to be able to read the part in the middle, but I think this is an exercise that I had a lot of fun with, and my wife actually encouraged me. She said, let's do something fun. Let's take our resumes and let's look at the jobs that we've had. We're call it midway through our career, and looking at the Steve Jobs one thing. In each job or role that we've had, what's the one thing that we've learned? And so I thought about that, and I said, okay, as we're going to talk about leadership today, on the far right, you'll see one word or one thing that I took away. And so I'm going to kind of walk through my career experience, and I'm going to focus on what I think is the most important leadership skill that I learned. And so I talked to Deborah a little bit about the types of people that would be attending to. I think a lot of us may have an agricultural background. I grew up on a cattle operation in southern Colorado. I think Aaron's out in Denver today. And so the thing that I learned growing up on a farm and a ranch operation is you got to work hard. That's one thing that is a key characteristic, and as you start to work with other people in the industry, a lot of us, I call us, farm kids, it's like that's a key characteristic that is important, and I think when you think about leadership today, obviously that's a key characteristic as well. From there in college, I really got into technology in high school, and as I started to get into technology, there was a startup that was called Vantage Point, which was John Deere Farmland and Growmark. And again, I'm going to focus on the leadership skill that I gained from that. That was about the time, it was about 1998, 99. The internet was coming to life. We were trying to figure out how do we share commodity information, weather information. The thing that I learned at that company was to try new things. And I'll tell you that there were John Deere executives that have been at Deere for 30 plus years that took me under their wing and said, we're doing new things here, and we're going to figure out new business models, and we think this internet thing is going to be around for a while. So that was the thing that I took away from that experience. The next opportunity that I had was to work at farms.com, and so a lot of you remember the .com days. All the .coms were a lot of new companies jumping up, but the thing that I learned there was new business models and new ideas. They're hard, and ultimately you've got to make money. And so as I went through that experience, I said, okay, as part of leadership, looking at the people that were leading the company, the people that I work with, you have to understand that this stuff is hard, and especially when you get into leadership roles, and whether it's you're leading people or you're on teams, this stuff is really hard. From there, I wanted to kind of throw in, the .com actually, the office in Memphis, Tennessee closed down, and I came back and had a chance to move to Kansas City. And I said, I want to learn about technology. And so I went to work for Sprint PCS, and when I first got there, I thought, I'm just going to sit back, and there's 20 or 30,000 people in this organization. I'll just kind of sit back. What I learned at Sprint PCS, and I know that there's probably people from Deere and Monsanto and Bayer, big companies on this call today, you can lead wherever you are. And I'll give you some examples. We used to have lunch and learns. I think we did 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. Those types of things, build camaraderie. It let us have some time to focus on our leadership skills. But my point is, if your company is 20,000 people or if it's 2 people, you can lead where you are, and you don't necessarily have to have people on your team that report to you to move into leadership. After my experience in big corporate technology, I said I wanted to get back into agriculture. I had the chance to work at the American Royal, and if you're not from Kansas City, you may not know exactly what it is, but basically it's used in education and livestock shows, horse shows. But the American Royal had some amazing leaders involved from the board of directors and the volunteer standpoint. And what I learned here was the value of mentors. And so I realized that it's super important to ask people, what their experiences were. Always have a plan to be able to step ahead. But I realized at that time that I needed to formalize a mentor network and be able to sit down and ask questions and advice. So I think for all of us in business, there's always that opportunity to look up to other people and develop mentor roles. I know some people do those more formally, informally. The point is to be intentional and to have those people that you can look to and ask those hard questions and also learn from. After the American Royal, as Deborah talked about, during my time at K-State doing the MAB program, I was focused on my thesis around a startup called Farms Technology, where we facilitated grain trade. I put the word in here, teamwork, and everyone's probably like, geez, that's really generic, and that's kind of what I thought too. But there were less than 10 of us there, and half the people were software developers and half the people were business associates, where you were selling, marketing, developing requirements. And what I learned is that small teams can be super effective and can truly drive change. We built applications and we built a business where farmers didn't have to call their grain buyer every day. They could now look at their mobile device and see what the price of grain was, number one. And number two is if they didn't like the price, they could put offers in above the market. And for someone that grew up in agriculture to be able to be part of a company that helped the industry with a small team that was dedicated on one initiative, to me that was really special, and I enjoyed that. Fast forward to today, again with another startup called FarmLink. We're focused in data analytics. And what's the lesson that I've learned this year? I'll tell you, Deborah and Mary reached out a few weeks ago and said, would you be interested in talking about leadership? And I'm thinking, Willow Creek, Global Leadership Summit, all these wonderful leaders. I'm thinking, I'm not qualified to talk about leadership. Surely you can find someone else that's done a lot more than I have. But what I realized is that there gets to be a point in our career where it's time for us to give back. And it's time for us to share experiences, because at some point we're going to be moving up. We all move up to take on more leadership within our companies. But even though we may not have it all figured out, it is important that we start giving back and we start supporting other people and sharing our experiences. So that's kind of a little bit about my background and kind of the framework for our talk today. So you're probably asking, what is this picture? Well, for my parents that still live in La Veta, Colorado, it's in between hay season and calving season. And so my mom and dad are actually on a trip in Nova Scotia. And my mom keeps sending me all these pictures on the phone. Isn't this beautiful and great? Isn't this wonderful? I'm like, this is awesome, Mom. But she sent this picture across, and I thought about this, and I thought about what we're going to talk about today. And so if you look at the typical Gen X, I think it's somewhere born 1963 to 1980. That's kind of the generation that I fall in. And so when you look at this analogy, this bridge, a lot of times we see work, we see different generations, and we see it our way. It's kind of a one-way bridge. And I guess my question is, as leaders, is it our job to change the framework? Do we need to rebuild the bridge? Do we need to rebuild the process so that it's not just one way? Because I know a lot of the boomer generation that may say, these millennials, they just can't get off their devices. And the millennials, I hear all the time saying, the boomer generation they won't even look at Facebook. They don't understand what kind of value we could add to the organization. The reality is that the millennial generation, the Gen X, the boomer, all of us have different perspectives to offer. And so I think that it's kind of our job to bridge the gap wherever you are. And if you're a boomer, it's a way to think about, how do I learn new skills and how do I do different things? If you're a millennial, how do I develop a mentor from someone else? So I think just kind of a picture that symbolizes something that we as leaders, no matter where you are, if you're a millennial, the beginning of your career, if you're a boomer, wherever you are, there are ways that we can always continue to improve and look at other visuals. So here's an example, and again, I think I'm trying to give something practical and things that I think about. On the right, we all saw that picture going around the internet. It's the person that's on their boat out whale watching, and they're on their phone. They're actually missing the whale. So how many of us go through life and we're texting during meetings, or we've got our heads down and we're not focused on what's happening, and we miss the moment? Or on the left-hand side of the page, it's something like, what is Twitter? And they just like, this is a complete waste of time. Well, maybe we need to go to the other side of the equation and say, I noticed that you're using technology all the time. why don't you raise your head, and this is one of the things that I do a lot. I'll go to the millennials, and I'll talk about, put the device down. And let's focus and make sure that we can shake someone's hand, whether it's a customer or one of your coworkers, look someone in the eye, and have face-to-face conversations. And I think that's our job from a communication standpoint, is to build that. On the other side of the equation is looking at, someone that says, well, I can't get anything out of Twitter. Well, you're right. Maybe the Twitter website doesn't work. Let me set up a Hootsuite account for you. Let me put filters on this so that you can just get the really good information relating to our business or relating to the business that we're trying to solve here. So I think that's where we can offer a lot of value from a leadership perspective, depending on if you're the far right or far left. And the fact is there's value in both, but how do we kind of bridge both of these conversations together? I'm going to actually take a breath here. Is there anything that someone wants to drop in the chat room, any questions or comments? If not, we're going to kind of move into the next step, which is the framework for the conversation. Doesn't look like there's anything yet. Okay, so I always start with a framework in mind. When you think about a framework, what is it that we always go back to? For me, I always need something to lean on and build from. And so I kind of go to a book that I read in about 2000, 2001. It's called First Break All the Rules. And I guess what I would say is I'm doing that exactly now, because I know in PowerPoint I've got way too many words on this. I know we're breaking all the rules. And you can actually Google this. I'm not going to go through and read these line by line to you, but you can actually look at these and see. But to me, this is the framework that I go back to. Let me see here. Yeah. Okay, so number one, when I look at the first framework is, do I have all the materials and equipment I need to do my work? So ask yourself that, ask your team that. And an example that I kind of go back on is I saw on LinkedIn there was a company called FanDuel. And they showed a picture of one of their new associates that came in. There was, when the new person came in, there was a brand new MacBook. There was some gear, pens, papers. It looked like the kind of place I would want to sit down and go to work. That related to another experience. I was talking to someone yesterday. They got hired 2 weeks ago, and they don't have a computer yet. And I know it's the startup world. I know that it's kind of tough. But how do you think that makes someone feel when they come in and they don't have a computer? Or you give someone a computer that's 5 years old, does that really give someone the equipment they need to do their job? We need to be intentional and think about that. Number two is, at work, do I have the opportunity to do what I do best? And so think about, personalities, introverts, extroverts, people that are good writers, people that are better at this kind of skill versus that kind of skill. Again, pretty self-explanatory, but that's a good reminder for me. Number three talks about recognition. And I'll tell you that my wife coaches me a lot on this. And my personality is, if I go through the day and 10 things happen in the day, and 8 of them are really good, and 2 of them, there's room for improvement. There's 2 things that we could improve on. What do you think I'm going to focus the most on? I can tell you it's always the 2 things. Gee, we could have done this better, or did you think about saying this? And the reality is that a lot of times if you spend just a little bit of time recognizing those 8 things that went well, celebrating your wins, as an organization, as a team, it goes a long way. So that's something that I'm continually trying to work on. The next is, does someone care about me as a person? I think this kind of goes back to the mentor-mentee. Do you have someone that you're pouring into? Do you have someone that's pouring into you? Because you want to know that someone cares about you as a person and that it's more than just a job. And I think as we get into, as the workplace continues to evolve, we see more and more of this. The next one kind of goes with that, which is, does someone encourage my development? It's more than just doing tasks, right? Is someone talking to me about personal soft skills, or have I thought about going to this? I'll tell you, when I was encouraged to think about the MAB program, that was one of the coolest things ever, because someone believed in me and they said, here's somewhere where you can grow and you can refine your skills and you can get access to a whole new network. Those are really cool experiences, and I hope that we as leaders continue to share those types of things that may be bigger, or maybe it's even smaller things from a development standpoint that maybe your company offers. I'm going to kind of lump the next ones together. Does my opinion count? Does the mission of the purpose, does it resonate with me? And are my coworkers committed to quality work? I think this is all, people want to do quality work. People want to know that they're valued and that the work that they're doing is being perceived as important. That's important to all of us today, so we just need to remind ourselves of that. And then I'll kind of lump the last three together. Again, you guys can go look this up, and this conversation will be available afterwards. But, people want to, they want more feedback. They want to know, is someone talking about my progress? And I look at this last one. In the last year, have I had opportunities to learn and grow? And, this might be a little bit controversial, but to me, the idea of an annual review I think that whole process needs to be reevaluated. If you're waiting a year to either get feedback on your performance or you're waiting a year to give people on your team feedback, that is way too long. For me, I think it's more important that you are giving faster turns of feedback, so maybe it's weekly, little tiny things that you can improve throughout the year. And I just think that when I hear the word annual review, it just makes my stomach turn. I think that we need to reevaluate the term review and move it more into continual coaching and continual feedback and kind of rethink that framework. I'll give you another example. When you talk about progress and people wanting to have the ability to learn and grow, it could be little things. It could be when you come into work talking about a podcast that you heard. So for example, Tim Hamrick just did a podcast with, I think, Pam Marone. So talk to your team about that. Hey, did you hear this podcast? Did you hear this thing that I heard? And it really kind of changes the perspective of how the team can work. All right, so we'll move ahead now. And those 12 items resonated with me. And I thought, as I read that in 2001, I said, this is really cool. How do I continue to think about these? The problem was that I couldn't ever remember all 12. So this actually is a lot cooler picture if you had it in PowerPoint, because Google Photos now actually does these animations. So this is a cool animation. You'll just have to imagine it in your mind. But I had a spark of genius. I said, how can I simplify this into something that I can remember? And so what I did is I came up with 3 questions, and these are things that I think about and try to be intentional. And it's not just people that work for me or anyone. This can be anyone in the organization or people that I see, because I used to find myself going back to the traditional question, hey, how was your weekend? How's the weather? That's fine. I think that those are fine starting points. But these 3 questions for me have kind of changed the conversation. And I think these are things that I ask myself from a career standpoint, and it's phenomenal to kind of open these up with other individuals. Number 1 is, are you learning and growing? When you summarize the characteristics and first break all the rules, one of the things that people want to do is, are you learning and growing? And personally, am I a better team member today than I was yesterday? So did I go through a master's program that made me better? Did I hear different leadership topics? Whatever it was, am I learning? Am I growing? Number 2, this is new. I mean, this has kind of changed in my career over the last 20 years, but people want to have fun. And I've been on crappy projects that weren't a lot of fun, but they weren't a lot of fun from a results standpoint, but the reality is, because of the people and because of how we were doing it, we did have fun. So the example there is, there was one night when you had a software glitch. It's 10 o'clock at night. You order pizza and maybe you sit at the ping pong table and complain about the situation for a while. No, it wasn't a good situation, but because the people that I was working with, we were having fun. And so I think you need to make those situations fun at some point, and know that every day is not going to be just a perfect workplace or work day, but in general, is this a fun place, and am I having fun in what I'm doing? And the last thing that I think about, and I talk about team members, and I say, this one of the things that you want to ask yourself, am I leaving the team? Am I leaving the company better than I found it? And there may be times when you move on to other careers or different companies or make transitions. And my goal is always that however I found the company, did I leave it better than I found it? And I think if you can answer yes in that situation, then you know you're doing a good job. And so I kind of summarize these 3 quotes and think that this is what I always lean back on as I'm asking questions. So moving ahead, I kind of thought about, where am I at today? And there's all these different words and objectives when it comes to leadership, but where am I focusing today? And so I've written about this more, but I'm going to give you just some practical examples and some things that I think are important from my standpoint have worked well and things that I continue to improve on. Number one is just DIY. And so we had a project, we were doing a CRM development project, and when we first set the project up, I actually went in and entered customer information, used the system as it was, and knew that there had to be a better way. And from there, we developed a project team, and we actually had someone else on the team come up with the requirements, and the project ended up different than I would have done it. But because we collaborated, because we worked together, it was better than what I came up with on my own. The fact is that had I not used the system, had I not ever been in there, I wouldn't have known what kind of feedback to give. And I think that it's really hard for team members to know that they're being told to do something that someone in a leadership role has no idea what they're even talking about. Just to give another practical example, sometimes I hear people talk about we need to do this from a social media perspective. And then I go look, and they have 2 Twitter followers, or they don't even have a Twitter account. It's like if you want to use something and you want to talk about ways to make it better, show me that you at least have experienced it and that you've had some experience in using these types of tools. So again, when it comes to leadership, make sure that we've at least gone in and understand it and have got I call it getting your hands dirty a little bit before you just go tell someone to do something that you can't give clear requirements around. I've always wanted to use this picture. This is my picture of my daughter's soccer team, and I've always tried to think about, when you're working in a team, if you can rally around a cause, what is the cause that you're trying to rally around? And if you get everyone on that standpoint, we can be so much more effective. So the example here is the company that I was working on while doing my MBA was called Farms Technology. And our objective was to help farmers trade grain online. Actually, I'm pausing for a second. Deborah, I don't see the questions, Deborah. I'm pausing here for a second, guys. It looks like I've got some questions. Deborah, can you, I don't see the questions. Would you read those out loud to me and I can kind of touch on those? Okay. Can you read the question to me, Deborah?
It was an email question that came in, but I think it was in reference to the 3 questions that you had on a previous slide, so we can revisit that if you want to finish your story about rallying a team.
Okay, no, I'm happy to. And like I said, if there are things that we want to please jump in, guys, because I have no problem with that. I'll tell the story, and then it will come back. And Mary, if you want me to answer that, I'd be happy to. So this idea of rallying a team, it's when we were focused on helping farmers trade grain, the idea was it didn't matter if we were software developers or if you were a salesperson. Our objective was clear. We were going to help people trade grain. And so the example is we came up with this idea, and this was about 4 or 5 years ago. We said, we're going to text out grain bids, and we're going to see what happens. And we sent this to a lot of our customers. As soon as we sent that text message out, no one had ever seen that before, and our phone lines lit up. And I guarantee there were a lot more phone calls coming than employees that we had. And what was really cool is from our CEO to every business person to every software developer, they were going in and they were talking to our customers. And so to hear a software developer explaining grain basis and how to trade grain on the website, it was a cool experience. And the fact is that we were all rallied around this cause. And so whenever you can get into that situation, I think that makes a big difference. So, Mary, was there is there a specific question that was related to the previous slide?
I think it was in reference to, do you see these 3 questions being asked differently and answered differently across generations?
I do, yeah, absolutely. Great question. So, I think that I've had some mentors that used to think, and they've kind of told me that they've seen the business landscape change. It used to be all about performance, and it used to be, you have a job to do, you're going to come in and do this job, and you're going to go home. And what good leaders have told me is that they're seeing a change in this. And these are the kinds of things that maybe millennials are more focused on. They want to know that they're having fun. And even if they feel like they're contributing a lot or they're not being called on, I think that people want to know that there's more to who they are when it comes to the job situation than just going in and doing an 8 to 5. So I think you're seeing an evolution in that, and I don't know that it's necessarily age-driven, because I work with people that are definitely in the boomer generation that get this. They've pulled me aside and said, you know, these are ways that they've coached me. So I think it's more of a mentality and not necessarily a generational thing. And that's why I brought these things up, because it doesn't have to be generational. It needs to be an intentionality around leadership that we can focus on. Any other questions on that? If you guys want to jump that in the chat room, I'd be happy to go through that. If not, we'll keep going through some examples here. You know, again, this is a practical example, but I don't know, has anyone ever used the tool called Boomerang? So in Gmail, you can actually install an extension that allows you to send a message later. And I think about, you know, years ago, early on in my career, man, I would stay up at night and I would wait as long as I could to send out that last email. I'd wait for my boss to send one at 8 o'clock, and then I always felt really good if I sent one at 10 or 10:30. And the reality is it wasn't high quality information that I was sending back, and the purpose of it just didn't make sense. And so I think about this now, and instead of sending an email at 11 o'clock at night just to prove that I was working or to use technology in an inefficient manner, now I think about who's receiving that email. So if I'm sending something at 6 o'clock at night and it doesn't need a response until tomorrow, is there a way that I can schedule that to hit the receiver at a time when they can think about it, and it hits them at a time where they can provide a higher quality response? Again, all kinds of technologies and hacks that are out there, but are we thinking about those in a way to make us look like we're working harder? Or are we thinking about these tools to say, I want to work smarter and I want this information to hit at the right time? So again, kind of comes back to the how do you use these tools, and let's try to continually work smarter and not just work harder on things. Okay, this is something that I'm really trying to focus on now. And this isn't necessarily in the workplace. And I guess I want to get real with everyone and say that I think that for me there's this epidemic. As you grew up with technology and you had the internet and then you had cell phones. This is a picture of me and my daughter, and it doesn't really make me very proud. I mean, this is something my wife sent me, and I think about, is that what I want my daughter to remember me by? You know, we're at dinner as a family and I'm on the phone. I have no idea what that phone conversation was. Obviously it wasn't that important. But whether it's with our kids or our families or the people that we work with, when you go into a meeting, those people, I've been that person that's always on my laptop or always on the phone. I'm not present. And if you're going to take the time to be involved in the conversation and you're not present, then you're showing disrespect, and really you're not doing a good job in either conversation. So this is something that I am intentionally trying to get better at. I will tell you that personally, one of the things that we've done as a family is we've enacted this technology free time. So at night from 6 to 8 p.m., 2 hours a day, you would think, and maybe you all are better at this than I am, but you would think that from 6 to 8 we could have family time, we could have dinner, and we could avoid technology for 2 hours. And throughout the week, probably 2, maybe 3 nights a week, somehow during those 2 hours, I drop the ball. I pick up my phone or whatever reason. And so we're working on this as a family, but I think that this can go into the workplace. And I think that we need to know, just because we can have 24/7 communication, that doesn't mean it's better, that doesn't mean it's higher quality. But this is something from a leadership perspective that I think all of us need to focus on. And I guess I would also say, you know, as leaders, is it important for us to be sending emails to team members on Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning? Maybe it is. But what kind of example are we setting? And if someone on our team is sending us emails on Sunday at noon and we're responding, when does the cycle stop? And I'm not saying that email or communications need to always stop on the weekend, but what I am saying is let's make sure that it doesn't become the standard and that it becomes something that is manageable and that we're not part of the epidemic that continues to increase in terms of people sharing more and more and being connected all the time. Just a point that I wanted to make there. So the next thing is kind of going off that point is let's be intentional. And I think as leaders, we have to think about our communication styles. And this isn't just about us. This is about the people receiving the communications. So for me, thinking about the message, do I want to text out my mom's a great example. Thank God she's not on this call, but she'll send me text messages that are 4 paragraphs long. Well, Mom, maybe you need to move that conversation over to an email, or maybe move that conversation down to the telephone. I see a lot of conversations where, thinking about email, someone, will fire off a 2-sentence response on email without complete thoughts, without thinking it through. And the reality, and then copy, 25 or 30 people. Now you've got 50 different emails going back and forth. When, if I would have taken time to make a phone call and called that person one-on-one and solved the problem, it could have alleviated hours of emails back and forth. So again, I think we need to be intentional and say, is this an email? Is this a phone call? Is someone going to be in the upper right-hand corner? Are they going to be receiving this on an iPad, on a mobile device? I know that so-and-so's traveling. What's the best way for them to receive this kind of information? In the middle, one of the things that I did is actually ordered some stationery, and they still have those post offices. They still work. You can actually go down and buy a stamp. I can't remember exactly how much they are now. But when I see something that's really special from a different team member, or I think about just trying to relay a message, those types of handwritten notes go a long ways. And I think if we can think through, take the extra 5 minutes and not just send a text message and say, hey, great job today, but what if you took the time to actually put that in the mail and write down, hey, you did a nice job on this presentation today, or I was really impressed with this. I can tell you that goes a long ways, and there's just not many people that do that today. But when we think about ourselves as leaders, those are things that we can continue to think about. Again, not trying to get too technical, but there is a tool that we've been using a lot, and I'm really fond of. It's called Slack. So some of you may use this and may know all about it. Some of you may have never heard about it. Again, this is it's a collaboration tool, and the way that I describe it, it kind of combines email, it kind of combines text messaging, Dropbox, Google Drive, and it's a collaboration forum, but what it does is it allows you to go back and forth and work on projects in a way. So if you have someone that you're sending an awful lot of email and you want to start to combine text message emails and document storage and collaborate in real time, I would encourage you to look at this tool called Slack, because on different teams that I work on, it's working very well. So kind of pause here just for another second and see if there's any questions or things that we've said. You can use the main chat room if you want to drop into a question here. I'll just pause for a second in case there's something on someone's mind. Actually, I'm not letting everyone off that easy. So I know like when I watch webinars that I may have 2 screens, and so maybe you're doing something else at the same time. But I'd be curious if people could jump in the chat box and say, let me know if you're using Slack, yes or no. I'm just kind of a poll here. Awesome. So again, not saying that we need to convert. This is just a great way to get some real-time feedback. But when I think about it, it may be something that from the next generation, the millennials, if you're wanting to have a different kind of feedback, people that are used to texting or used to using a mobile app, just something to look at. Like I said, it may not be the solution end-all be-all for all people, but it's something to look at. Yes. So Deborah asked the question, are people having to adjust the tone of conversation through Slack? Yes. And again, it becomes, when you think how people use this, then messages may get too short, or you may have different ways in which things are perceived. So I think you kind of have to get to know, the team that you're working with and what is that tone. If you're in the heat of doing a software release, or you're in the heat of battle rolling something out, you really need to understand someone personally and know them from a communication standpoint before you go too far in depth with some of these things. And it's hard too, because a lot of people, when they use technology tools, they don't necessarily complete all their thoughts, and so the messages can be misconstrued. So I do think you need to be, as you roll into these new tools, kind of think through the personalities and the team members that are using those. Okay, so here's another, maybe in the terms of putting some new ideas out there, maybe more in the software development arena, but a lot of things that you start to hear from technology and startups are things like Agile and Scrum and Standups. And one of the things that I found really, really powerful is when you're on small teams to have these 15-minute stand-ups. And the reason it's called a stand-up meeting is because there's not chairs. And so, I don't know now, whenever a meeting's called, it's always an hour. It seems like it may take 10 minutes, but it's always an hour, and it seems like, there's always more people invited than actually contribute. The idea of the stand-up is in the morning, you sit down and you look at a whiteboard and you say, okay, for everyone on the team, what are your key objectives today? And I know for myself and a lot of people, it's that you put too many objectives out there. You might have 20 things on the to-do list, and I've seen research that shows the more stuff you have on your to-do list, the less likely you are to accomplish it. So with these stand-ups, it's like, what are the one or two things that you're going to focus on today? It doesn't need to just be software development. It's like, if I'm going to create a podcast or I need to create a marketing brochure, I've got 20 things on the list. I've got X hours in the day. What is the one or two things I'm going to accomplish today? And then when you go through that as a team and say, okay, 3 or 4 people on the team, 5 people on the team, everyone sees who's working on what. And then you also talk about, things like blockers. Well, what's preventing me from getting this to the next page, from this column to this column? And so you're always looking at how do I move projects ahead. And so even though this is software development related, I could see this in the education system. I could see this at a grain company, wherever it is. It's like this is a way that you could think about that. Audra was just talking about 15-minute stand-ups are useful. Awesome. So, Audra, can you just type in, is that technology related or is it outside of technology? So Audra was talking about using this, and I think the idea is that's awesome. I think there's more and more of this that can be useful, where we get things that are outside of it. She's using it in marketing and program management. I think people are craving for more, actually shorter communications, more frequent, and the ability to go do what they're good at. So that's really good feedback, and I appreciate you kind of sharing that. I think, again, bringing some things that I've seen in other industries, but there's a great example of what Audra's brought that into a non-tech environment. So then thinking about tools, I'll share some funny stories. I graduated high school in 1996, and I was from a small town, and so I think the internet got to us a little slower than others. But when I was a junior, senior in high school, this thing called the internet was coming around. But someone also gave me a copy of the CD. It was called Microsoft Encarta 95. And it was the entire encyclopedia on a CD. I thought, I don't have to go back home now and look up all these CDs. I can now actually, I don't have to go look at all these books. I've got them all in CD. I said, I'll never have to do reports like I've always done them. I thought that was the coolest tool of all time. Someone said, well, this internet thing is probably going to be pretty powerful. You can actually have access to a whole lot of information. I went to the library. We had 2 computers that were on this thing called the internet. I went to the library, dialed up. It took forever and ever. And I was like, there is no way that I'm ever going to use this internet thing. It's way too slow, and the information wasn't very good. I said, I've got Encarta. Well, fast forward just a few months, and then I started to see how powerful the internet was, the web was, information was able to flow. And so there was this revolution. Then I thought through, this is a picture that we took. We were with a group in California, and you have the Blackberries. I remember using the Blackberries, like, this is going to be the best thing ever. and there's no way I'm ever going to change. And about the time that I got so connected on the BlackBerry, then Android and iPhones and all these new services came out, and again, technology changed. One of the tools that I use today, kind of like Slack, one of the most powerful tools that I use is Evernote, and it's kind of a digital filing cabinet. So if you ever have questions on that, this to me is one of the coolest things and helps from a productivity standpoint and a personal standpoint today. But I know it's going to change, and I know that in 5 years I'm probably going to sit back and look at this slide, and it's not going to be the thing that I'm using tomorrow. As our teams change, as our cultures change, and as our needs change, our tools are going to change too. And so I'm not telling you to go create a new system or a new tool every month. I've done that in the past. But I do think that as we look at innovations and as we look at disruptions in the marketplace and we look at what our needs are, tools will continually evolve. So I'm going to go quickly on these two. This is an office that we designed, and so if you can look at this office, there's 3 desks that kind of sit in a horseshoe. And we would be on the phone, and we would be looking at our KPIs in front of us. We'd be looking at the markets. We could see what was happening in real time. When you were on the phone, everyone could hear what you were saying. This took a while to get used to from an office design standpoint. But I'll tell you some things that we never heard. No one ever said, well, I didn't know that, because you heard everything that was going on. I don't think that this type of setup works for every team, but I would encourage us to think about office designs in the future. When you put the KPIs or the goals and objectives you're driving towards up above, or you have these open floor plans where people can hear things, there is some good that comes out of that. So again, the other thing I'd point out is on the far right, it's a stand-up desk, and so there's a lot of people that are looking for different ways from a health standpoint to be able to do different things. So I just kind of put something else out there from a leadership standpoint. Maybe we can think about the way that we design offices. Maybe it's not just a traditional cubicle style setup. Maybe it's not offices and doors. Maybe some teams need different setups when we think about productivity and things like that. All right, so here's something that I'll kind of leave you with as far as kind of connecting with people, on a personal level. We had an experience where our team, all of us, there were 3 of us that had, this was about 4 or 5 months ago, we all had Fitbits. We started doing these challenges. And so we would actually, the 3 of us would do a work week hustle. So every week the goal was to see who would get the most steps. And it encouraged us to have conversations around our health, to have conversations around fitness, to encourage us to get more steps in, to go out and get some exercise. And I'll tell you, this small example brought our team closer together. So just something that we did that I thought was a lot of fun, and it, if anyone's got Fitbits, I noticed that there are a lot of companies now that give out Apple Watches and things like that. But anything you can do to integrate health or different types of passions into the workplace, I think it was a good experience for us. Okay, here's the last slide, and then we'll get into discussion. I think as leaders, when I look at people that are my mentors, people that are my close friends that I go to when I'm thinking about, new business ideas, and I look at people that have sought me out and said, can you provide some kind of, can I be a mentee under you? I think that the similarity is that a lot of us want to be lifelong learners, and the point is that we can continue to learn. I know that with RSS feeds and setting up tools where you can see information quickly. Amazon, you can download books and listen to books on the go. Podcasts, I'm a huge believer in podcasts. I've actually written about this, where when I pull my car into the garage, I have a separate I have a separate device that's in my car, and I can actually listen to different podcasts based on what I'm in the mood for. So productivity or leadership or startups or whatever. In terms of books, there's tools out there called Blinkist, and then I think you can kind of get into webinars and things like that. So there's all these things that are out there, and a lot of these are free. But if you're just intentional and whatever you fill your mind with, whatever you take time to do, set the process up, and there's just so many resources that are available to us as leaders. So Deborah, in terms of information about Slack, Slack is a free download, and it's a way that teams can come in, and basically the premise behind Slack is that you set up channels. and you can talk about, within a channel, we're working on Project X. And so this is the project that we're doing, this project, and then you might have, software requirements, you might have pictures, you might have team members. All of the different channels then go underneath that, and you can start to drop documents in there. You can copy and paste links from the web in there. You can connect it to other services so that you can actually track time. It just connects with a lot of different pieces, and I would encourage you to to at least look at it. Also, drop in on I'm happy to give one-on-one tours and kind of show you how we're doing it as well. Social media. So thinking about social media, I think this could be an hour-long podcast. This is my take on social media. To me, I think there are different platforms that you can use different platforms in different ways. I use Twitter to get a lot of information and kind of get a gist of what the market's saying, in different areas. The problem with Twitter is that you have to have tools that put filters on it, and you have to know what you're looking for, or else you get lost in this sea of just a ton of information. So I would encourage you, the tool that I use with Twitter is called Hootsuite, so you can set up searches and filters and be able to get specific information. If I use Twitter to think about this is people that I want to connect with, then a lot of times you think about a sales funnel. Twitter is, I want to connect with these individuals. Then the next platform would be like LinkedIn. So once I've met someone or know them, casually, then I'll move that relationship from Twitter to kind of LinkedIn as kind of the ideal flow. And then for me, Facebook is kind of for friends and family, but I actually use Facebook a lot less today than I have in the past, and actually find a lot more value from a business standpoint in Twitter and LinkedIn. Kind of pause there. We've got 9 minutes. I love to have some conversation. We talked about a lot of things there, so I'll pause and let someone else. I love your questions, Deborah. Let some other people ask questions here, or things that we could go deeper on. I'll put my contact information up here. While I'm waiting on questions to be typed in and to come through. So like I said, I use LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook. I'm curious, on the right-hand side there I have Snapchat, because I don't have it, and the reason is not that I'm unwilling to do it. I just don't understand the value in it. Especially if I'm going to take time to take a picture, it seems like I would want to keep that forever, and it just kind of goes away. So if you guys want to jump back into the chat box and tell me, is anyone using Snapchat, or how would you use it in business today? That's one that I'm not using, and it's not that I'm unwilling to. I'm looking for business uses, or what value have people found in that. So this is a question for the team. Darcy, that's kind of where I am. One of the things that I've started to do is just write down life hacks or things that we've learned and kind of document these. So I started to share different ideas and technology and uses and initiatives, and I share those on kevinheikes.com. So it's something new that I've put out there, but feel free to go, gather resources. It's just, my thought is, if I'm going to take time and learn a new process, learn a new technology, figure it out, I want to write it down, and then I want to share it with my friends and put something of value out there so that people don't have to continue to recreate the wheel. So feel free to use my website for more resources and to learn about some of the technology things that our family is testing. Deborah, I think we can give it another minute or two for questions, but I think that concludes the majority of the content that I had to get through for today. I sure appreciate everyone's time. This has been fun to walk through some of these, and I look forward to connecting with everyone in the future. Thanks, everyone.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We will be distributing a copy of the recording in MP4 form of the webinar, and it will be posted on our website as well through YouTube. So please feel free to join us back at www.mabksu.edu in the future for a recording.